As much as I'm excited about the newest...
Oof. Pause the music. And this also gives me a good time to put up my plate and stuff and get ready to switch from Genshin. I'll be right back. Okay.
upcoming character Shikuno in Heizou, there's something that's been bothering me about him, and in this video, I'm going to address the whole situation.
Alright, what's been bothering you?
So after finally getting some useful info about Heizou during the 2.8 livestream, I was left with some weird first impressions about him. I mean, I have a couple of reasons why I feel this way, and the first one being is that he will be featured alongside Kazuha in the first phase of 2.8 update. Don't get me wrong, having a chance to pull Kazuha and Heizou at the same time seems like an awesome opportunity, especially for those who have been waiting for the Maple Samurai Boy for more than a year now.
Agreed.
So getting to pull for the Inazuma Detective seems like a nice bonus. However, this is going to be a banner with 2 Animo units featured. I mean, normally when we're building teams for the Abyss, it's usually just one Animo unit that makes the comps work, aside from a small exception like Xiao Jio, since all you really need is that godlike Viridescent Venereer resistance shred, coupled with things like crowd control or healing. And sure, you could say that these 2 Animo units can be used in separate teams, but what I'm trying to get to here is that a lot of people will get to see and compare Heizou's capabilities against other Animo units.
As we should, because this is a gacha game, and he's in a category of the other animal characters, so yes.
And here's the thing, Heizou is definitely not going to be a healer, his crowd control seems negligible from the videos we saw of him, and most importantly, he's actually going to be the second Animo unit whose entire selling point is to be a damage dealer.
Not just that, he is the 3rd main DPS catalyst that we have right now in Genshin Impact. Ningguang, Young Fei, and him. You can't really call Klee one. She's not a main DPS.
Like, think about it, while every single Animo unit can deal really good damage, maybe aside from Sayu, they still offer something else, like Sucrose, Kazuha, and Venti, who are crowd controllers, or Jin and Sayu, who are excellent healers. This leaves only Xiao, who's really just there to deal big dumb damage by hopping around, which is absolutely fine, but at the same time, he was the exception so far. So, going back to Heizou, if his entire purpose is to be the 4-star Animo damage dealer, what could this possibly mean for those who want to build him, and more importantly, how will he be compared to the rest of the Animo units?
He's going to be mainly compared to Zhao's damage when we talk about his main DPS capabilities. If it's not Zhao, then 100% people should compare him to Ningguang and Yang Fei. Not the whole element reaction, but the damage scaling. Okay? I got to re-say that. The damage scaling, not the actual reactions. Because it won't be fair at that point. Geo is strong without elemental reactions. Young Fei is really strong because of Vaporize and Melt, so it won't be fair. So just compare them with their scaling, and the next thing he's gonna compare it to is the crowd control. But to be honest, his crowd control doesn't seem all that like crazy wise. So I just hope he has good scaling,
which have been so crucial in so many team builds. Honestly, I think some people might get the wrong impression about him, especially once he becomes available, because from the way I'm seeing things right now, he is being marketed as this melee catalyst bruiser, which looks really cool, but at the same time, we're not used to building Animo damage dealers, as strange as that
and that is facts. The only unit who is pure Animo damage, 100%.
sounds, since most of the time we looked at them as powerful supports that also deal really good damage. But
that is true. Most Animo characters are nothing but supports. Either healing or just straight up supports.
Back this up with some evidence.
Oh,
what we saw in the 2.8 livestream was that first and foremost, the focus of his entire kit is built around the elemental skill. It looks like a pretty simple talent that deals damage. However, there is also a mechanic called Declension Stacks, which you can build up and will increase the skill's damage and AoE. Now, while the official damage multipliers and all the intricacies of how you can build the Declension Stacks will become available pretty soon in 2.8 launch, it's important to understand that the skill is more than likely going to be a huge part of his overall playstyle. I mean, sure, there's
basically how Ningguang is, I want to say. You really get the bang for your buck if you're using Ningguang with her charges and her element skill, because that her shield just does a ton of like dumb damage on an enemy on a single target. So yeah, I agree with that. And then the burst though, it's alright. I will say I do like the whole concept. I like the fact that we're like brawling, like you said, we're fighting an enemy, which is cool. But yeah, I feel as though his element skill is gonna be really like the thing you level up first, and then you figure out whether his normals and bursts is gonna be the next step.
Also the burst, which seems to have some minor crowd control built into it, but it doesn't look like it will be used for that purpose. And even if it can cause a second explosion from the elemental absorption, it still looks like more or less another method to produce what is hopefully a big damage number. But it will probably not get activated as often as you would when using his skill, since, you know, skills almost always have quicker cooldowns.
Unless they make his burst low cost, or around like 60. Me personally, I'm getting tired of seeing 80 cost or 90 cost burst. Like I swear to God, like please give me like a 40 or 60. I'm sick and tired of seeing high costing burst, dude. Please, for the love of God.
And there's also a secret method how you can reduce them further, and why this might become really good for Heizou, but I'll get back to this in just a moment. Finally, there's also normal attacks which look extremely fun to use, but from the track record we have seen in the past with previous characters, I have very little faith Hoyoverse will allow us to deal a lot of damage with Heizou's normal attacks.
And really, with our Catalyst track records, when it comes down to normal attack damage, they're really not that good scaling wise. So of course their main big damage comes from their charge. So I would definitely say I would love to see a Catalyst that can kind of play more with their normal attacks than their charge. I'm not saying make the charge weak and make the normals strong, but kind of like in between. It's like it's kind of hard to explain, but just don't make it so centered around their charge if you are gonna play with their normal attacks and stuff. But yeah.
And I'm talking about the literal damage numbers, not things like causing a lot of swirls and other type of secondary damage. So overall, if Heizou's primary purpose is to deal damage, then I think it's a good time I talk about what you could expect from this. Alright, so let's get the simple stuff out of the way for this detective/martial artist. There's probably going to be two ways how you can approach his full damage potential. The first one is the standard way, building critical rate and damage, so you can produce those big beautiful numbers from his skill and burst, and this is considered to be the most optimal build when dealing single target damage. The second way is with elemental mastery. The damage will come from reactions, and since Heizou can trigger them super easily, thanks to the fact he is a catalyst user, I don't see any situation where this build will not be decent enough, aside from going up against single targets. Keep in mind that going for an elemental mastery build does require obtaining artifact pieces with the EM as the main stat, which has the lowest drop chance out of all the main stats, and on top of this, if you go for something like an entire 4 set with elemental mastery, like Verdescent Renderer, well, it can take a long time. In fact, I still don't have a 5-star circlet with EM after spending thousands of resin. But that's the simple stuff. More or less, you could just slap a VV 4 set on Heizou, get some critical rate and damage, and just call it a day, if I'm being honest here. And yet, there's some more exotic options to consider, and part of the reason why I made this video is that I wanted to talk about this next thing. You see, Animo is insanely good when it comes to producing reactions. Normally, you would think that it's just swirls and nothing else. And yet, they can also basically cause any reaction besides with Geo. All you really need are 2 or more targets. Like for example, one of these poor hilichurls has Pyro and the other one has Electro. If they stand close enough to each other and you do something as simple as one normal attack with Sucrose here, she will cause a swirl with one of the elements which will also spread to nearby targets. So if Pyro is spread on top of someone with Electro, well, you get the picture. There will be overload damage, and it was all accomplished with the power of Animo. So, why do I bother explaining this to you? Well, remember how I said I believe that a big part of Heizou's playstyle will be his elemental skill? Well, you can actually reduce the skill's cooldown by using the Thundering Fury set. The 4-set bonus will decrease the cooldown by 1 second, as long as there is an electro-related reaction caused by the user, and since I already showed you that you can actually do this with an Animo unit, Heizou won't have any problems utilizing this, especially in taser teams. In fact, we can already see this effect in play when using someone like Kazuha Kazuha. Now, I'm not saying this is the best build for Kazuha, but you can see from the footage here how his skill cooldown drastically decreases, which, as you can imagine, if the same can be done with Heizou and his skill, you could potentially be looking at something like causing maybe 1 or 2 additional skill activations during the rotation. Obviously, this leaves a big hole in the team due to lack of VV Shred artifact set, and yet, this is also why I wanted to make this video, because as it turns out, utilizing Heizou with Thundering Fury and really good Electro and Hydro applicators like Fischl and Xingqiu or Yelan, the last spot could be taken by an Anemo unit like Kazuha with Verdescent Venerator set. Now, I know this might look like a really niche team comp, but at the same time, if Heizou does in fact deal a lot of damage from his skill, utilizing that cooldown reduction from Thundering Fury might not be a joke and a serious thing to consider. Now, all of this depends whether you're ready to sacrifice your resin in a domain that otherwise isn't super popular or efficient, but I do believe it may become a viable option for those who really enjoy spamming Heizou's skill. The only problem, and a pretty severe one, is that you cannot utilize Thundering Fury if there's only a single target, since there's nobody to spread the elemental statuses to with Anemo.
I was just about to say that, actually. I'm glad that he said that. Like, you can, but like he already said right here, it is very low. I mean, you can still reduce skills cooldown like shown here, but against single targets, cannot speak. The availability is really low, and that is true. You want to have more enemies in order for that to really proc, but you can still do it if there's one enemy, but don't think that it's always gonna happen. So it will open up to a lot of like niche artifacts or artifacts that we normally don't get to use, which is awesome. I think animal characters are ones that really do that per se. They really bring out like another type of artifact sets that we normally don't use or don't try out. So I think that's really good. But yeah, I don't know if I'm really gonna try this artifact set on him. I got like 2 builds that I'm thinking that's gonna work, but if I try it, I try it, and if I try it, I'll make a video on it.
And you won't be causing reactions like Electrocharge or Overload, which means this entire strategy fails against single boss chambers. So if you are considering, then make sure to use this team comp with multiple enemies in the chamber, which is basically already the same thing you would normally do when using Taser as usual.
Right.
Either way, when looking at Heizou as a pure damage dealer, there's definitely some options you can already consider, even some exotic ones like Thundering Fury. But at the end of the day, this is just my pre-analysis of the character, and everything will become much more clear after he's finally released, and we get to take a look at those damage multipliers and other gameplay intricacies. You know what I love about Catalyst users? They are probably the most flexible units in the entire game when it comes to team building. Like, even if Hoyoverse decides to be stingy with Heizou's damage multipliers, you can still get
and not give us a single good 5-star unit that can pull off main DPS, and on top of that, make it to where that it's very clunky to play Catalyst users.
give him thrilling tales of the Dragon Slayers,
Yeah.
and just use him with Verdescent artifacts to boost the team's damage. Or, remember how I said he doesn't heal? Well, you can equip him with Prototype Amber and keep the team alive with pretty decent heals. So at the end of the day, it's very hard to screw up a unit like Heizou when he can literally deal Anemo damage with normal attacks, which means it's super easy to create swirls and capitalize on VV Shred, or you can just give him other great support catalysts. Now you might be wondering, can't you already do all of this stuff with Sucrose, and on top of it, her crowd control is better? I mean, yeah, you could look at it from this perspective. However, we still haven't seen what Heizou is capable of, how much damage he can deal, and most importantly, how well he will integrate in team rotation.
And that's basically what I'm gonna be saying when I get him. Like, depending on how it goes, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I think this character is gonna be a lot better to play instead of him.
Or, you know, the fact that he's literally a close combat fighter and has some really cool normal attacks could be enough for some, if not a lot of people. I mean,
which is why I'm building him.
Before, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to building an Anemo damage dealer, even as going as far as using Thundering Fury set, which also means pairing him together with another Anemo unit who has the VV Shred set, which can lead to some very interesting and fun team comps. But overall, I kind of of feel optimistic about Heizou. He actually looks like someone who has a fun playstyle, and honestly, I really just wanted to make this video to talk about the unique position Anemo Element is in, and how this might affect you when you're trying to build Heizou as a damage dealer. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will be spending a lot of time with this Inazuma detective to give you the best review, guide, and tips for Heizou, so make sure to subscribe to my channel and leave a like on the video to help support me in my content creation journey. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.
Hey everyone!
I didn't mean to do that. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the video. 100%. I enjoyed it. But I am worried. I like what he was saying. I am very worried about that because it's going to be really hard to really know if it's going to be worth. I'm not going to be willing for him, but I do at least want to see the constellations. If the constellations are good, I might go for like C1 or C2 depending, but other than that, no. What about you? What about you, Mayro?